Hi, and welcome to this session on emotional resilience, how to thrive in stressful times. This is a totally new and unique session being offered at reInvent, but I think it's obvious why we're doing it. My name is Rich Hua, and I'm a principal worldwide specialist for Aurora and also an Amazon Culture of Innovation speaker. In addition to helping customers achieve database freedom and sharing about Amazon's uniquely innovative culture with business leaders around the world, I also train people in emotional and social intelligence. In a previous life, I served for several decades as a counselor and evangelist for a nonprofit in San Francisco. And there I created a program to help people grow in their emotional intelligence skills. This came out of my own struggle to develop emotional intelligence for myself, something that was a really significant weakness for me as I was growing up. I had the good fortune of collaborating with a great friend of mine named Meng Tan, who was also developing an EQ program at Google called Search Inside Yourself. And that eventually became the most popular course at that company and spread to millions of people around the world. Well, since that time, I've had the privilege of training tens of thousands of people in their emotional intelligence at Amazon and at other companies. And I'm going to share some of that with you today. And I really hope it makes a positive difference in your life. So as we dive into what we're going to talk about today, our agenda covers a few things. You'll understand what emotional intelligence is and why it's important for resilience. You'll learn how to reduce your stress, be more positive, increase your grit, and boost your resilience. You'll also get some resources to continue developing your emotional resilience in the days to come. So I'd like to start with a little poll. How much do you agree with this statement? I am experiencing more stress lately than usual. Would you strongly agree, neither agree nor disagree, or strongly disagree? 1 through 5. Just think about that in your mind. You know, as I've done this with tens of thousands of people, it's probably not surprising that a vast majority of people are 1s and 2s. It has been a very stressful time over the last few months. And really, this session is specifically intended to help us be able to thrive despite those challenges that we're facing. And so as we begin, I want to talk about what is emotional intelligence. You know, how we think and act are determined by 3 things: our IQ, our personality, and our EQ, our emotional intelligence, and these are each distinct qualities. People may be cognitively very intelligent, but not necessarily emotionally intelligent. And people of all types of personalities can be high in EQ or low in EQ. So what is EQ? Well, it's the ability to recognize and understand your emotions in yourself and others, and your ability to use this awareness to manage your behavior and relationships and adapt so you can achieve your goals. Or put more simply, it's knowing how to have emotions work for you rather than against you. Let's face it, we all have lots of emotions and they affect us whether we like it or not. Multiple studies have shown that they affect us more than we actually realize. Almost every decision we make has an emotional component to it, from where we live, to whom we marry, to our career, to decisions we make every day on the job. Some people say, well, what if I work at a data-driven company? What do emotions have to do with that? Well, the fact is, emotions are data. Just as much as market analysis and financial spreadsheets and reference architecture, they're all data points, and we can either learn to harness our emotions as data points in a productive way, or we wind up being controlled by them without even realizing it. So the good news is that EQ is completely flexible and we can change it because of the neuroplasticity of our brains. So what happens when we don't manage our emotions well and our emotions get the better of us? We look like this a bit. You ever had a car slam its brakes in front of you? Or someone go off on you in an angry tirade? Or perhaps your boss say, hey, we need to talk? Or maybe over the last several months, you're on a work call and your kids run into your makeshift home office screaming? Or perhaps you read a really disturbing news article about the pandemic or something else going on in the world? Or perhaps you're worried about an elderly or vulnerable loved one, right? Perhaps in a moment of stress, you said something you regretted or did something you look back and said, man, what on earth did I do that? So there's actually a physiological reason for it, and it's called emotional hijacking. You know, when stimuli come into our brain, it hits the emotional centers first, the amygdala, and then it makes its way to the logical centers called the prefrontal cortex. Well, theoretically, they should work together and be involved in making good decisions. However, when the stimuli is really, really strong, the amygdala actually overrides or hijacks the other parts of our brain and takes over. And the amygdala is actually responsible for the fight or flight response. So it was really good from an evolutionary perspective because it kept us alive, right? Really helpful if you're out in the plains, you see a saber-toothed tiger, you just want to get the heck out of there without thinking about it, right? But not so useful if you're sitting in a work meeting and your boss says something you don't like. You probably don't want to say the first thing that comes to your mind. Might be a career-limiting maneuver. So we will be more productive and successful if we can learn to manage ourselves better. And this aspect of higher emotional intelligence increases our resilience as well. And how do we do this? How do we actually increase our resilience? Well, there's an idea that I really like to put before us that I think is a great image of what that means. And it's staying buoyant. I think buoyancy is a really nice way to think about it. As you take a look at that bear, what word comes to mind when you look at it? Just think of one word. Oftentimes I've heard things such as relaxed, peaceful, calm, focused, chillin'. It's polar bear, so that's very appropriate. And sometimes we're buoyant and the water's really calm, so it's kind of easy. And other times the waves are 10 or 20 feet high and they're crashing down on us, and we need to still learn how to be buoyant. We know that the past several months have been really, really challenging, right? It's been like a tropical storm all around us. And one of our biggest challenges that we've had to deal with has been a lot more stress. And stress is what makes otherwise happy, compassionate, helpful people kind of into ogres, or maybe angry bears. And so, one note, of course, is when you thrash around, you wind up sinking. And so we need to learn how to be buoyant and do it the right way. And there are two keys that will actually help us to be buoyant. The first is positivity, and the second is grit. I think of positivity as learning how to float to the surface, and then grit is knowing how to get back up to the surface when the waves push you down into the water. So let's talk for a bit about positivity. Why is it so important? Well, the reason positivity is important is because we tend to have a negativity bias, which means we remember negative events better than positive ones. We may also think more negative thoughts than positive ones. So I'll give you an example of this. Imagine you just gave a presentation to your team or to a bunch of really important customers, and somebody gave you this feedback after your talk. Which part stuck out to you the most? Well, if you're like me, it's those last few words, right? Even though they said well-written, funny, informative, uplifting, ran a bit long. Like, what is their problem? What are they talking about? That, creates the most visceral response, right? That's an example of the negativity bias. We actually think 50,000 or more thoughts a day, and most of those thoughts are talking to ourselves. So there's a lot of potentially negative thoughts that can actually occur in our mind. And so what we need to do is actually learn to neutralize them by having a healthy ratio of positive to negative. And I say neutralize because it's different from suppressing, right? It doesn't mean we ignore it. It means we actually deal with it by really intentionally having positive thoughts so that we can sort of neutralize the negative thoughts. And that is having that ratio. Some say that ratio is 3-to-1. Others say positive, negative should be a different number. But really the point is have more positive than negative. Now, one thing I will say is that positivity does not mean ignoring your negative emotions, right? And feeling or pretending it's all good, right? It's not being some kind of Pollyanna. Negative emotions are often healthy responses to situations we encounter. To things like disappointment, sadness, grief, fear, or anger, perhaps over injustice. Those can all be appropriate, and you should give yourselves permission to feel those feelings. But what we need to do is balance things out so we don't get pulled into a negative vortex. And there's actually quite a few studies that have shown the power of positivity in even our health, right? Research shown that it's better for our job performance. And we actually wind up doing better on the job, better performance, quality, customer service. It also improves our immune response and lowers our risk of heart attack. And a study released last year by Boston University and Harvard found that optimistic people have a 50% greater chance of living past 85 than pessimists do. And generally, they just have an 11 to 15% longer lifespan. Wow. So a lot of good reasons to be positive. So you may be thinking right now, oh, great. What if I'm not as positive as I'd like to be? Am I doomed to failure and early demise? Well, the good news is no. Okay, there's something you can do about it. You can actually train yourself to become more positive. And there are a few things I'm going to share with you today that can actually really help. Remember that neuroplasticity, that means our brain can change. You can actually increase the positivity. And one of the most powerful ways of doing it is what I call the 3 by 3. It simply means writing down 3 gratitudes a day for 3 weeks. That's it. Therapists actually use this as one of the number one ways to help people who are depressed boost their happiness. And many have found that it's actually even more effective than antidepressants. Why is that? Antidepressants generally focus on increasing either dopamine or serotonin, neurotransmitters in our brain. And guess what? Gratitude has been found to boost both. It's a really, really powerful thing. And when you think about taking time each day and writing down things you're grateful for, what actually happens is you train your brain to notice it more. It's this idea of sort of targeting things that you can be grateful for. One example I think of is I bought a car, a Hyundai Genesis a few years ago, and I love it. It's 330 horsepower, beautiful. And between the time I decided to buy that model and I actually bought it, was about a month, before I found a good deal. And guess what was happening during that month as I was driving around the highway? Guess what I saw everywhere I went? You guessed it, Hyundai Genesises. Now, was it because everyone suddenly went out and bought more of them? No, it's because it was on my mind, and so I noticed more of it. The same exact thing happens with gratitude. When you take time and you write down things you're grateful for, you train yourself to notice more of it around you, and that actually elevates your mood and makes you more positive. An alternative way of practicing this is actually doing a gratitude visualization. Best time to do it is at the beginning of each day, right when you wake up. All you simply do is take 1 minute and think about something you're really grateful for. The roof over your head, your job, a loved one, maybe something that happened to you the day before. Really savor it. Roll it around in your brain a little bit. Then after you've thought about it, then get up, put your feet on the ground, and start your day. Right? It can actually really do wonders. Now, you may think, oh, that's not going to work. That's ridiculous. But, I want to encourage you, try it. Try it for a week. You may be surprised. In a work context, I was inspired by John Mackey, CEO of Whole Foods. He ends all his business meetings with what he calls appreciations. And it's essentially having people share about their coworkers and why they're grateful for them. So when he first introduced this to the board of directors at Whole Foods, they thought it was kind of ridiculous and didn't want to do it. But after a while, it finally caught on. And now some of their board meetings last an extra 2 to 3 hours because they can't stop appreciating each other. I mean, it's really kind of wild. And of course, we know why. Remember, gratitude creates dopamine and serotonin, and those make us feel good. So why wouldn't we want to do more of that? So really, really powerful way to become more positive. The second way is self-compassion with EST. One of the things that we have to do right now during these really challenging times is have self-compassion. We have to realize that things are a bit messy. We've all had to adjust in major ways and are continuing to do so. And there's no such thing as professional versus personal life anymore. It's all kind of professional, right? And so it's okay if your dogs are barking or your kids are screaming, randomly during one of your meetings. We're all in the same boat. And we would give other people a break, so we need to give ourselves a break. And one important thing is, we have to figure out how to harmonize our work and our personal lives. Studies have shown that people are working 1, 2, or 3 extra hours a day if they're working from home. And so we have to be able to tell ourselves, it's okay to stop work. It's okay to not get everything done today, right? That self-compassion is really quite important. And I say with EST because EST stands for external, specific, and transitory, rather than personal, pervasive, and permanent. And this is from research done by Martin Seligman, who's considered the father of positive psychology. He developed this idea of being more positive by having what he calls a positive attributional or explanatory style. So it really just means when negative things happen or something goes awry or it doesn't work out, or you feel like you failed at something, explain it more as external, specific, and transitory rather than, hey, it's all personal, it's pervasive, and it's permanent. Right? So for example, something doesn't work out, don't say, oh, this always happens, or I never get it right. Say, okay, this time it happened. Change words such as I'm an idiot to I made a mistake. Change it's all my fault to here is my responsibility. Everyone goofs up now and then. In the long run, this is just a blip on the radar. right? So maybe you're on a work call and things aren't going well. You're getting kind of frustrated. The kids run in the room screaming. You get distracted. You snap at them. A lot of things can happen, right? And so have compassion on yourself. Figure out, hey, if there's a better way to do it, but realize, hey, it's not that big a deal. Maybe you need to say sorry to your kids. But, realize we're all undergoing really challenging things. I was actually on a call in front of actually hundreds of people. And I did this thing where I needed to stand up. And as I was doing so, I actually caused the backdrop behind me to fall over. And so everyone saw my rather disorganized home office. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that just happened. And I literally thought, what an idiot. And I had to take my own advice and go, oh, I made a mistake. And I had to laugh at myself. And, no one really cared anyway. But it's just an example of we can have that negativity bias when you learn to have some self-compassion. Now, one final note is that if we want to be more positive, don't read too much news because it can really make us feel negative. I really want to encourage us to just read 1 or 2 pieces of news a day from a trusted source and not get pulled into what some call headline stress disorder. One great way of just being more positive is just, stopping the flow of that stream of negativity that can come from so much doom scrolling that can happen. So you may be thinking right now, okay, these are great techniques. I don't have 3 weeks to become more positive. I need to do it right now. Is there anything that I can do? Well, the good news is there is. When the bullets are flying and 100 things are pulling at you, that's when things tend to break down. Ever been in this situation? Well, the best solution is to get more oxytocin. And if you look at this list, you see a lot of benefits from it. It reduces stress. It increases optimism and trust. It increases compassion, even is good for your heart. And you produce oxytocin when you give someone a hug, when you take a walk out in nature, when you listen to some relaxing music or have a baby. And those things are tough to do during the workday sometimes. But there's a simple thing that you can do to produce more of it very simply, and that's called the mindful minute. In fact, many senior executives do this regularly all over the world, from companies such as Nike or Apple or Salesforce or Google, and of course here at Amazon. And we're going to do today a little practice that I want to introduce to you that's used by the Navy SEALs. When they're in tactical situations and the bullets literally are flying and they have to make good decisions, they do this thing called box breathing. And essentially it means breathing in for a 4 count, holding it for a 4 count, breathing out for a 4 count, and then keeping it out for a 4 count. And you generally breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. So I want to ask you to go ahead and do this with me. It may feel super goofy if you've never done it before, but I want you to invite you to try it out. See how it feels. You may really be surprised at the benefit. So please go ahead and close your eyes and just kind of clear the air out of your lungs. And now ready? Go ahead, breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again through the nose. Hold it. Out through the mouth. All right, now just do it on your own a few times and see how that feels. And I want to encourage you to really try to focus on your breath, where it sits, kind of on the way in, maybe through the nose, and then lands in your chest, on the way out through your mouth as you exhale. And some people like to make sure they get a really full breath, and they do that by putting their hand either on their chest or their diaphragm. So they can feel the chest expand on the way in, and they feel it contract on the way out. Want to really try to fill your lungs on the way in and push it all out on the way out. Let's do that for a little bit. If some thoughts come into your mind that are distracting, really try to just bring your focus back to your breath. Observe the thought, let it pass, and just gently bring it back to that breath as it goes in, as it goes out. Okay, now let's do one final cycle. All right, now go ahead and open your eyes. So how did that feel? Again, for some people, that may be the first time you've ever done that. You thought that was a little strange. But ask yourself, How did you feel? A lot of people say relaxed, focused, maybe sleepy for some people who've never done it before, or just more happy, or, different things that are quite positive. And so here's the reason. You actually just created more oxytocin in your body in just a couple of minutes. You also activated the parasympathetic nervous system that decreases your heart rate and blood pressure and also downregulates intensity of emotions such as anger or fear. And with more training, you can absolutely improve your attention span, your focus, and the quality of that. So if you'd like to practice it more, there's some great apps out there such as Headspace or Calm. YouTube has some great videos. Alexa, of course, has some great skills for this. And one kind of pro tip, if you do this just before going to sleep in bed for just a few minutes, it will actually help you get higher quality sleep. So as we head into the second part of our keys, is grit. And how to get more of it. Grit is something that Angela Duckworth found is the number one determiner of success in life. It means working hard, sticking to your goals, and focusing without being distracted. And so there are actually some ways to increase your grit. One is to make some friends at work. In the UK, some researchers found that being disconnected poses a danger comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day and is more predictive of early death than the effects of air pollution or physical inactivity. And so many of us are connecting with friends in our personal lives, but the thing I want to talk about specifically is making friends at work. Friendship should not only be in our personal lives, but it should also be at work, because you know why? We spend a lot of time at work, maybe now more than ever. And studies have absolutely found that friendships are a key contributor to satisfaction, enjoyment, and engagement on a job. One study actually found that if you have two good friends at work, it's equivalent to having an extra $100,000 a year in salary. Now, don't ask me where they got that number. I have no idea, but that's actually real research out there. And so making some friends at work, making a point to connect with people, talking on a personal level, not just work stuff, really makes a huge difference. I'm so grateful for the friends I have at work. I have multiple ones that I can talk to, let down with, blow off steam, complain, talk about the challenges I'm facing. And it makes such a big difference for my ability to be resilient, keep on going, and find satisfaction. A recent study from the Morning Consult found that 58% of remote workers feel disconnected from their coworkers, and 44% report feeling isolated and lonely while working from home. We need this more than ever to really make that intentional reach out to make some friends. One special call out, if you're a manager or you're a tenured employee at your company, I want to encourage you to make an extra effort to include new employees who've just joined over the past several months, especially during this virtual onboarding time. It's really hard. Remember how hard it was for you to onboard, even when you could go into the office, all the things you had to learn and the people you had to meet. It's 3 or 4 or 10 times harder doing it in this virtual environment. So really reach out. It can make a difference. Remember, it's not business as usual. It's very much business as unusual. The second thing that can make a big difference is rewriting the story with gratitude and generosity. This is really from research that Martin Seligman, that I mentioned earlier, did for the Army to help them become tougher mentally, to finish their missions, to finish their training. And he found that it wasn't by more physical, duress, doing more push-ups or something. It was actually training their mind that when they are in painful and challenging situations, to ask themselves, what can I be grateful for even in this tough or painful situation? What can I learn to become a better or stronger person? Or, generosity. Well, how can I be generous with others? How can I give people the benefit of the doubt? By doing that, they found that the rates of completing missions and the rates of completing training went up by a significant margin. And one of the powerful things, too, is this idea of generosity. It means giving other people the benefit of the doubt, not assuming the worst, right? Think about it. Have we ever offended people or said something that hurt someone else? How many of us are doing that generally on purpose? Right? Nobody. Right? The fact is, it's almost always on accident. So why would we assume that when other people do something that maybe hurts us, that they're doing it on purpose? They're probably not. There's actually this idea called Hanlon's razor in psychology that goes like this: don't ascribe to malice what you can ascribe to ignorance or neglect. It means telling a compassionate story of why someone did something else. And so when we do that, it actually helps us manage ourselves better and helps us be more resilient. Right? Imagine you're on the highway, somebody cuts you off. You can think, oh, that jerk, I can't believe they did that. Instead, what if you thought, whoa, that was dangerous. Maybe they're on their way to the hospital because the loved one is really hurt and they didn't even realize what they did. Imagine how different that feels, and it helps us actually manage ourselves in a more productive way. And one really great tip that we can actually use, or sort of idea, actually is Q-tip. The idea of quit taking it personally. So the final part here, start with why, that helps us with grit, and that's essentially purpose. We get more grit by asking, how will what I'm doing benefit my family, my friends, my team, my colleagues, even the world? That keeps you going when times are tough and you don't see results for a long time. This is actually the most powerful aspect of grit that Angela Duckworth found. And so, the powerful thing is that we can find meaning and purpose in just about anything. It's not the result of circumstances, but of perspective. It's a famous story of JFK visiting NASA for the very first time in 1962. And during his tour, he met a janitor who was carrying a broom down the hallway. And the president just casually said, "Hey, what do you do for NASA?" And the janitor replied, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." No matter what we do, we can find purpose. And during this time, more than ever, maybe it's important to find that to help us get through this challenging moment or moments that we face. Helping out someone else is really powerful. You can mentor a colleague. You could help your org solve some problems. You could reach out to, one of those new employees that's, probably struggling right now to onboard. You can help people in your neighborhood. Many, many powerful ways to be able to have grit. Nietzsche famously said, "Those who have a why to live can bear with any how." So one of the things that I do want to share as a resilience booster that's pretty important is to move around. One of the biggest dangers of working from home and quarantine is we're sitting down a lot more than ever. And so when you sit down too much meaning more than 9 hours a day, you have a higher chance of anxiety, depression, well-being. You also have a higher chance of obesity, heart disease, and cancer. So my encouragement is move around. Don't sit too long. Get a standing desk. Walk in place. You can take phone calls or meetings actually while you're walking around, as long as you're not on video. There's so many things we can do. And so even if you're sitting 8, 9, 11, 10, 11 hours a day, counteract that with 60 to 75 minutes of moving around can make a huge difference. So just remember to do that. So pro tip is just put some movement into your schedule, maybe a timer or a calendar invite to remind you to get up, move around during a day, and not sit too long. And another thing that's quite powerful, resilience booster, is to get sleep. Ask yourself, how much sleep do you get each night? Is it 5, 6, 7, 8, more, or less? What happens when we get less than 7 hours of sleep a night? Well, this is actually what our brain looks like, not just our face. Matthew Walker is a sleep researcher at UC Berkeley, found that sleep-deprived people have a 60% greater amygdala activity. That means their emotions are 60% amplified, so they might be unmerited or inappropriate for the situation. They also wind up interpreting facial expressions as more threatening or negative. So it's not a good thing at all. So this resilience booster is just get 7 or more hours of sleep a night. You want to look like this, right? It's a powerful, powerful way to be able to increase our resilience and our emotional intelligence. One thing you can actually do that maybe you weren't able to do before is take a nap in the middle of the day, right around 1:30, 2 o'clock. A lot of research on biphasic sleep that helps you. If you just take a 20 to 25-minute nap, it can actually make a huge difference for energy for the rest of the day. Now, some people like to do this thing called a nappuccino. You basically drink a cup of coffee, take a nap for 20, 25 minutes, and it takes about that long for the caffeine to get in your bloodstream. You wake up ready to go. I've actually done that quite a few times in this work-from-home era, and it actually really does work. So as we conclude, the final question I do want to ask is, what one quality most denotes a high EQ and separates great leaders from average ones? What do you think? There's a lot of answers, and most of them are probably correct, but there's one that Daniel Goleman says is the highest form, and he is one of the luminaries in the field of emotional intelligence. He says it's compassion. The definition of compassion would be, I understand you, and I want to help you. And isn't that the epitome of really customer centrism? It's also really the foundation of any meaningful human relationship. I understand your pains, your challenges, your goals, your dreams, and I want to help you with them. Right? There's so many benefits beyond just our professional careers, right? In all our relationships and our personal life. It's also a key to helping us improve inclusion and diversity. After all, isn't inclusion about understanding and valuing other people's perspectives? And so we all actually have a natural ability to be compassionate. But the number one killer of compassion is stress. So many research studies have shown that to be true. And so if we can actually manage our stress better, that natural compassion can come out and really make a big difference for other people. So as we sort of conclude today, I do want to give you just one final resilience booster, and that is to volunteer and serve other people. You may think, wait a minute, how is that supposed to boost my resilience? Well, there's actually a lot of science behind it. And Kelly McGonigal actually has done research, and she has a quote in one of her TED Talks that goes like this: how you think and how you act can transform your experience of stress. When you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. When you help other people, it has absolutely been found to make a difference in helping you be more resilient. So there's so many things you can do these days. You can run errands for elderly neighbors, volunteer at a food bank. You can reach out to friends and see how they're doing, as well as your coworkers, and support your colleagues at work. There's so many people who really could use just even a friendly hello. You know, one of my coworkers does what he calls random acts of connection. He'll just ping somebody and say, hey, let's just chat for 10 minutes. And it's completely personal, not about work. And almost everyone says yes, because we could all use some connections at this time. Yeah, as we conclude, a lot of times people say, where do I go from here? We can get really excited about this kind of session. But here's some things that you can take away that can absolutely help you improve your emotional intelligence and resilience. You know, commit to practicing one technique for 30 days. And then one of the most important things is to find an EQ buddy to practice and grow in these skills. Share some gratitudes, do some mindfulness. One of my greatest EQ buddies has been my wife of almost 30 years. And she has done so much to help me become more emotionally intelligent by helping me practice and giving me honest feedback about my gaps and what I'm improving. And, reading some good books can really make a big difference. I'll share some with you in just a moment. And then also checking out the Emotional Intelligence website for more resources, richardhua.co. Lots of great resources there that you can leverage with videos and articles and EQ trainings from lots of people like Goldman, Laurie Santos, that can really help you with your journey. One person once said that the two things that impact you the most are the books you read and the people you know. These are some awesome books. Made a huge difference in my life. Highly recommend them if you're starting on your EQ journey. I've read all of them at least once, and they've really impacted me and really made a difference. So thank you for your time today. I hope that what I shared resonated and really helps you in some way, small or big, thrive even more in these uniquely stressful times.